Abroad Pod.
Hello, listener, and thank you so much for joining me on this 42nd edition of the Teaching Abroad Pod. I'm your host, Rowan, and joining me this week will be Oxford Seminars graduate and now experienced teacher, Michael Onischuk. He taught in China for 4.5 years. Before we get to Michael, though, I did want to mention that since I just so happened to be in Costa Rica at this moment, I had the pleasure of meeting in person recently with another grad, Lintonia Davis, who is also now our contact at Idioma in Costa Rica. And she shared some really great information about their programs. So I thought I'd break from routine and give a little job seekers update for those looking to stay a little closer to home. She let me know that in addition to their typical business English programs in San Jose, they also have some new programs starting in maybe March or April in Limon on the Caribbean coast, as well as in Guanacaste on the Pacific, teaching not only business English, but also middle and high schoolers. They're seeking candidates for both online and in-country hybrid positions, so that's in the classroom as well as online is what they have available in Costa Rica right now. So if you want to teach in Costa Rica or online, reach out to your job placement advisor about these great options. And I should also give a shout out to Moose Cafe at Plaza Cariari, where we had some excellent pizza. Anyone who's passing through Cariari, check out Moose Cafe. In just a moment, we'll be getting to our very exciting interviewee, Michael, who taught in China for over 4 years, including during COVID. But first, a word from our sponsor.
With Oxford Seminars, starting your new career teaching ESL couldn't be easier. Oxford Seminars has trained more than 70,000 teachers over the past 30 years, and you could be next. Our comprehensive 120-hour program starts with live instruction from an experienced ESL teacher, followed by convenient online modules. If your goal is to relocate overseas or even teach from the comfort of your own home, Oxford Seminars' renowned lifetime job placement service will get you where you want to be. Right now, you can get $50 off your Oxford Seminars TESOL TESOL TEFL course price when paying in full by calling 1-888-225-2480 and giving the code TEACHINGABROADPOD. Visit oxfordseminars.com today to find out more.
Welcome back, listeners. We are now joined by Oxford Seminars graduate and much experienced English teacher Michael Onischuk, who we helped find a job in China way back in the spring of 2018. He worked his way up to senior teacher and then moved over to the international school route as a 5th grade teacher before coming back to the States. In addition to his TESOL certificate, he's earned a BA in International Affairs from University of Colorado Boulder and studied abroad in beautiful Bordeaux, France. Welcome to the pod, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So when you first started communicating with us back in 2017, you'd expressed interest in a wide variety of Asian countries, but funnily enough, mainland China was not one of them. What made you decide to apply to and go teach in China in the end?
That's a good question. A mixture of wanting to go to China because there was I saw that China was opening up more and more at the time. And I thought it'd be a great way to get my foot in the door. I wanted to learn Mandarin. I had friends who studied Mandarin at university, and they seemed to enjoy it. And at first I was like, oh, I'd like to go to Japan or Korea, and ended up deciding, well, China seems like it'll be an interesting route, and decided to go with the one that Shane English in Yangzhou, and went, okay, let's do China.
Nice. So I guess you liked it well enough. You stayed there a little while. What would you say are some of the pros and cons of teaching in China from your experience?
Most of the pros are people are really welcoming there. They get excited when they meet foreigners, and there was something I really liked about how warm and inclusive people could be. You hear all the horror stories about like, oh, people are mean and scary, and you would think that would be the same thing in China and, not speaking the language, but people want to welcome you in and say, hey, do you want some food? Do you want fried rice? Do you want this chicken dish of ours? Do you want some tea? and you just sort of sit down and you start talking with people, and they genuinely are nice people. I think the biggest
Nice.
con at the time, later on, was with COVID and their policy, but now China's reopened fully and people are, back in, they're starting to come back in. I still have friends there who are working at international schools and training centers. But yeah, it altogether, I thought it was an excellent experience.
Great. Hey, as you mentioned, it was a bit of an odd time, you might say an unprecedented time to be an English teacher in China, since you were there from before the pandemic started in, I guess it
Mhm.
was late 2019, through to almost the end. And as you said, things are opening back up now. They've basically done away with the COVID zero stuff. But what made you decide to stay through it all?
Uh, a mixture of things. The first was I had a puppy, and still do. He's now here back in the States with me. He's 3 years old, and I knew it was going to be a logistics nightmare just to get the
Mm,
paperwork done to get him back to the States. And I wasn't prepared to move back. I really did like living in China. I had a good group of friends, I had a good support network, and I also thought it was important to experience what would become a historic event. It would be something to tell people in the future about, to say, look, this is what it was like on the ground being there, and being able to say, what was good and bad about China's zero COVID policy, and to the end, saying, what can we do better in the future?
fair enough. I mean, the puppy is probably the best reason of all, I guess. It'd be
Well,
hard
yeah,
to to leave that there.
that's true.
So I read enough news stories and followed enough Shanghai people on Twitter and things where you could see that some of the lockdowns were pretty bizarre from our perspective in the West, I guess, because things had kind of switched gears long ago. But what
Mhm.
was it like kind of living it? Were you able to, were in your city, get out and about quite a bit, or were there periods where you just couldn't go anywhere and you're in your apartment for months on end?
Well, at the very beginning, I remember we had a Chinese New Year celebration. It was a big work event. We had 50 foreign teachers, the entire Chinese staff for this training school that I was at. And there was rumor about what was going on. And we all went on our holidays. I went down to Sanya, which is this beautiful tropical beach, almost like the
Oh,
Hawaii
I've
of
heard of it. Yeah.
China. It's beautiful. The
Awesome.
waters are clear. South China Sea, nice sunny weather. It was 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I went down there and we started getting told, hey, you should probably come back, cut your holiday short, come back to the city.
This is coming from the school?
This is coming from my school, which was nice. They were managing the process along the way, saying like, hey, we're getting concerned. We're starting to hear reports. Our school is connected to a local government official who said, yeah, you guys should probably come back. We're probably going to go into lockdown. And we didn't know what lockdown was at the time. And we came back. I was on the last train from Nanjing to this small city of Yangzhou. There was no one on the train. It was empty.
Wow.
I actually have video of being in this train car, which usually would be packed full with people, sitting at tables, having food, empty. And
This is a long trip, I take it.
no, this was only a 45-minute trip,
Oh, was it?
but they have these small little train cars that everyone has like a table to sit at, eat at.
Okay.
The bullet trains are fantastic in China.
Yeah.
They're
Don't
really
have those
nice.
here so much.
But yeah, so 2 months of lockdown, and then as the US and the rest of the world went into their lockdowns, China reopened locally. So it felt like nothing had changed. KTVs, which are karaoke bars, essentially, they opened up, bars opened up, restaurants reopened, everything just reopened, and it felt normal. The only thing that was closed were cinemas, and it was a strange thing, and that remained for about a year. Cinemas stayed closed, and COVID became more of a city to city management process. I got put into a quarantine hotel only once in my entire China stay because I had flown out of Nanjing International Airport to a small city in southern China, and just so happened that someone passed through the airport, tested positive, so everybody
Oh
who
no.
went through the airport had to go into quarantine. 14-day stay provided by the government. Food was all right, but it was fine. At the end of it all, I think the biggest stressor was when big cities started just shutting down for no reason, when you'd have one case or maybe two cases, and there would be no close contact reports, but they would shut down anyway because they were worried.
Hmm. So that happened in your city?
It did. So then Suzhou, which I moved to for, I first started at a training center in Suzhou, and that city shut down. So we had to teach remote, and from there it was just 3, 4 months of teaching online and waiting for the go ahead. And then Shanghai had its massive outbreak where they were reporting hundreds of cases a day. We were right on the border with Shanghai, this city, and they said, well, we're going to stay shut down until Shanghai gets better. And it wasn't until Chinese New Year of 2022 that it reopened.
Hmm. So did
Yeah.
you experience those kind of barren streets or where you're going to the store and there's nobody there and they're checking your QR code or whatever at the door?
Yes, I experienced that. Actually, I still have in my wallet a little card they give you, and it has the dates that you can go out. And it was like once every like 3 days you could go out food shopping, or, you know, to go beyond your community's gates.
Yeah, I mean, the least you can say is you had quite a life experience and stories to tell for the rest of
Oh
your
yeah,
life. But it's nothing like that now, I hear from the people you know on the ground. Things are pretty back to
pretty much back to
pre-COVID.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
Crazy
are
how it just flicked a switch and it's okay, we're done with that.
exactly. One of those things where I'm just like, wow, like, I watched all my friends who were in China, still under quarantine, the lockdown, switch flips, and then suddenly they start saying, "Oh, I got COVID, I got COVID," and it became a thing on Chinese social media about like if you got sick with it, if not, and they had different sayings for people who did get sick and didn't get sick, and they turned it into more of just a meme for themselves. It was interesting.
Indeed. Social experiment.
Oh yeah.
All right, so moving on to something a little more positive, I guess. What
Yes.
were the highlights for you in terms of food and drink? What would you suggest anyone going to visit or live in China should try at least once when it comes to cuisine?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would just say be open to try anything. It's surprising what meals come out. I was in a rural community once. They gave us donkey meat, which was a choice,
Hmm.
but you don't doesn't taste like it tastes like beef, sort of. It was surprising. So, if someone offers you something, be willing to try it. There is it's a touristy thing. They'll have stands that sell bugs and stuff, but it's meant to be like a gotcha thing.
Hmm.
So you don't have to do that. If you're with a Chinese colleague and they say, "Oh, we should do this," 9 times out of 10, they're just pulling your leg because they just want to say, I made the foreigner eat something funny.
So you didn't eat scorpion or anything?
I did not. I had a friend who did, and they said it's just very crunchy. I did have frog, bullfrog. That's a everyone between the ages of 21 and 28, 29, they like to it's like a delicacy to have bullfrog. So you'll have a lot of those restaurants.
Was that in France or China?
No, that was definitely China. It's a very popular thing. So I had Chinese friends who would say, "Oh, let's go have bullfrog." It's all right. I'm not a big fan of it.
No, doesn't taste like chicken.
Tasted more like fish, but
Fair
bonier,
enough.
you know. And
How
then
about
drinks wise,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say drinks wise, hot water. It's a joke, but drink hot water.
Yeah, I had a colleague who taught in Taiwan, and she said, I really became fond of warm water. I never would have thought to drink it before, apart from coffee or tea. But I guess, yeah, China, why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things you at first you're like, "Oh, this is weird drinking hot water," but you get used to it, and then it becomes just a thing where instinctually you go to put on a kettle and boil some hot water, boil water, get some hot water ready, and just have a day full of hot water.
You still doing that?
I still do it.
Makes sense, especially in the winter.
Oh yeah, keeps you warm. In the summer, it's weird, but you get used to it.
And what about sights to see? Did you travel anywhere particularly memorable that you think is worth mentioning? You already mentioned
Uh,
Sanya, I guess, but anywhere else?
yeah, Sanya. I would also say Guilin is this beautiful area full of mountains, rivers. Um, it's hard to describe. It's very peaceful and quiet. The main city, Guilin, is historic in its own right. But once you travel outside of it and go into the mountains, you end up in rural communities, but it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's really nice. I went with colleagues and ended up I shoot film in my free time and ended up filming on a 60 millimeter camera our little trip.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have it digitized?
Yeah, I did. It Nice thing about China in general, there's only a few locations that develop film. So I sent it off to Beijing, and these guys in Beijing who work for the university there, one of the universities, developed it, digitized it, sent it back to me.
Well, send us a link if you can. It would be great to show off
Yeah,
some of your film skills on the YouTube version of the pod.
yeah, definitely.
Now, how did you find Chinese students in the classroom? What kinds of tips and tricks would you share with your junior teachers in terms of keeping the class engaged and on topic and things like that?
Uh, Students tend to be very, very well engaged with material. I think it's just sort of, they're raised in school and at home, it's study, study, study. At the training centers, it's less about trying to drill. I mean, you do drill the material, but trying to have fun with it. Get the kids to play, try to have creative games. At the international school side, similar aspect of trying to get the kids engaged with games, but usually at that point, you're also in school. The kids try to be smart and troublemakers. So
Mhm.
you also have to make sure, because you don't have an assistant, unlike at a training center you do. You have to be a little bit more structured in your approach, firm with when you do say like, "Hey, cut that out."
Mm.
But most of the time, it was kids tend to try to behave as best they can. They try to show off too because they're like, "Ooh, it's a foreigner. I want to show them that I'm cool."
So it's not at all like being in a fifth grade classroom in Connecticut, let's say.
I would say probably a similar level of teaching kids when it comes to like having fun with them. It's probably much easier here in the States just because you speak a common language. So it's
Mhm.
easier. There's cultural things that and gestures and stuff that we do, in the West that a Western student will understand, but then a student in China might not understand a certain look that you give or like are you sure you want to do that type
Mhm.
reaction. It's important, when you're in the classroom teaching abroad, showing them cultural aspects from your home culture to be like, hey, if you upset someone, this is how they might respond. If they're really happy, this is maybe how they'll respond. So then the kids become more understanding. And they're quick to learn too.
It's a good point. A lot of teachers, when they're abroad, they're not just teaching a language, they're sharing a culture as well.
Exactly. And I think that was the nice thing too, is it's also the kids teach you something. So
Right.
when national holidays come up, the kids are more excited to show you, oh, this is what this holiday is in China. So when it came to Spring Festival, the kids were really excited to show like, oh, this is what these characters mean, this is what these colors mean, this is what year we're going into, like what the animal means. They want to tell you these things. Some kids can communicate it better than others, and that's okay because they're excited to at least share it with you, and then you learn something. I think that's the important thing. As a foreign teacher, you should also be willing to learn from your students.
There's a saying some people I notice put it in their cover letter. Not all the time because that would be boring, but I see it from time to time and I really like it. Where it's something like when one teaches, two learn, which is very true.
It is true.
So what's next for you on the teaching front? Where do you see yourself next and why?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I've got, through Oxford, I'm now reapplying to interview to different schools and want to go back to Asia. I'm excited for that. Hopefully, maybe Japan or Korea, Thailand as well. I'm not saying I'm done with China. I would love to go back, but maybe something new cultural experience. That's really what I'm looking for.
I mean, there's so many different cultures and sites and whatnot all throughout Asia. So it makes
Oh
sense you
yeah,
want to see more than just one.
that's true. Very true. Plus, it gives me a reason to take more photos.
I saw you did say pretty much all of the contacts we'd put you in touch with were reaching out within 24 hours. So it looks like you are in high demand. So kudos to you.
I guess so.
One question we always like to ask our guests who have taught abroad is what advice would you have for people who are maybe sitting on the fence a little bit about getting TESOL certified and teaching abroad, wondering if it's really worth their time and money?
It's a good question. I would say I was in the similar boat. Originally, I was sitting on the fence, wasn't sure if I wanted to, and it was just one of those moments where I looked out at the world and said, I want to see what people can, what other people live like. Don't be afraid to do it. It's going to open up opportunities that you probably would not have experienced elsewhere. So that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
For me, it was definitely a life-changing experience going to teach abroad in Korea and volunteering in Cuba and things like that. So I guess you had a little taste of it already with having studied abroad in France and your degree in international affairs. You kind of had that interest already, but good for you to go out there and experience it.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to get out there and experience the world. It makes this big world feel smaller, at the end of the day.
Well said. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for taking the time to chat with me today. It was great having you and hearing your insights all about teaching and living in China.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. Love to do it again sometime.
That would be great. We love to have our guests come back and tell us all about their future adventures.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today, Michael. It was great having you and hearing all your insights about teaching and living in China. Before we go, we do have another little JPS update for those job seekers who may be listening. China has really opened back up this year, and schools are in great need of teachers. So much so, in fact, they've raised their starting salaries. Gone are the days where teachers were getting offered 6,000 to 10,000 yuan renminbi for their first job in China. Nowadays, you could expect it to be more in the range of 12 to 30,000 yuan, and depending on other benefits they may be offering or your experience or educational background, it could even be a little bit more than that. But regardless, 30,000 is a lot. As the visa process takes some time, typically around 4 months, with all the document authentication and whatnot required, our contacts in China are already accepting applications for fall term or August, September starts in all types of schools. So now is a good time to start your application, with schools offering a free apartment or a housing allowance in lieu, in addition to the very good salaries. The savings potential is astounding. So thanks again for tuning in to the Teaching Abroad pod. We'll be releasing new episodes at least once a month for the next little while. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe and also share it with your friends. Remember, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, etc. If you have any great ideas you'd like to hear us discuss in upcoming episodes, please leave them in the comments on YouTube, send them in the comments to Oxford Seminars on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or email us at teachingabroadpod@oxfordseminars.com. Thanks for listening.